Hello, everybody. Welcome in College Football Tailgate Episode 2, ACC Preview Part 2. I'm Dan Watkins, joined as always by John McKechnie of RotoWire. John, what's up, buddy? Let's talk a little more ACC. Had a great time talking the first half of teams with you the other day.
Yes, what a blast it was, and gosh, we got another half of this conference to dig into. Some interesting teams, some fiery takes to here to come. So I'm pumped.
Yeah. So basically, I want to start things off really like if you have any lingering thoughts that we didn't get to the other day. So we did Clemson, we did UNC, we did Duke, we did SMU. I think there was one other one in there too that's just slipping my mind right now. But
Louisville.
Louisville, yes, the dark horse. How could I forget? So if you have any lingering thoughts with those teams, and then I think we'll kind of blend into ACC Media Days, coaches having comments as they always do this past week, as we just kind of like fulfill our media obligations here until the season starts.
So let's see here. I did notice listening back that I didn't specifically name drop the second string running back on Louisville. That's my fault. The man's name is Duke Watson. So he's the great lightning piece behind Isaac Brown. Almost 9 yards a carry last year. I feel like that's something you got to pay attention to.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, really, the only thing that like lingering thought as I keep going through these teams, and now that I've really dug in on the entire conference, is that if Clemson does not go like 11-1 here, they had some big issues this season. This team, I think, is by far and away the best team in this conference. And at the end of the day, they should be standing hosting that trophy in Charlotte with really no issues here getting through this conference schedule.
Yeah, I think that would be the biggest of the Power Four conferences, like the biggest disappointment, the biggest bag fumble of anybody. So the pressure's on Clemson in that sense, but when you have a program like and a coach like Dabo Swinney, who is just such a master motivator. I was listening to Trevor Lawrence talk about Dabo a week or so ago on Pardon My Take, and he's like, yeah, he pretty much had us thinking that like North Carolina A&T didn't respect us. So like he's able to kind of get the guys going no matter what. And I think it's a schedule that we talked about. The bookends are difficult with LSU and South Carolina, but in between, they're still going to find a way to kind of like have the juice throughout the season. At least we think so.
Yeah, Dabo pulling the Kirby Smart before Kirby Smart pulled the Kirby Smart there couple years ago. But I just had the screen up. Let me post it up here again. The conference odds for the ACC. They've moved a little bit in Clemson's favor, even more so since we last talked, John. When we talked earlier this past week, they were at plus 110 to win the conference on FanDuel. Now plus 105. It's minus money everywhere else. So you can still grab that Clemson ticket because, for one, I'd be shocked if they don't even make that game. That's a disaster. But
Yeah.
I mean, just going into that game, having Clemson at plus money when they're probably going to be anywhere from a touchdown to a two-touchdown favorite in that contest is going to be a really nice ticket for you to have in December.
Exactly. So that's one to lock in now, and like you said, FanDuel definitely like the friendliest of the odds out there. So that's one to dig into before we get into August.
All right. So that's going to take us into media days here. And my big takeaway from just everything I've read, besides the Bill Belichick eating popcorn at the end of the day think piece that came out of The Athletic, I don't mean to rag on that reporter or anything like that, but I thought that was just a silly college football piece there that came out. The Clemson wide receiver room hype is real. I mean,
Yeah.
Dabo, even admitting he hasn't had this kind of talent at that position in a long time, I think was a big step for Dabo. It feels like Dabo might be taking some steps of personal growth this year. In the year of our Lord 2025, Dabo Swinney is growing and evolving, and that could be bad news for the rest of college football.
Well, I did get asked. I do a radio spot in Ruston, Louisiana, every Tuesday. Shout out the sports company down there, and they asked me who the best receiving room in college football was, and it was hard to move off of Clemson. I think Antonio Williams is just such a difference maker. I did notice also that they gave him the ball on handoffs 7 times last year, and it's like 100 yards and a touchdown. So it's like That's interesting to me, especially when they don't really, if there is a weak spot on this Clemson team, it is at the running back spot. So a little bit more end around action, I think, for Antonio Williams is interesting this year, especially for fantasy purposes. And then I love Wesco too. I think that guy is an absolute dude. So we kind of brought this up as far as like the Clemson DNA, what had been a winning recipe for them in years past. Nasty front seven and elite wide receivers. They have all of that once again here, and I think that that's absolutely true. It's been a minute since we've seen like the T Higgins, Justin Ross level of difference makers out wide for them.
Absolutely. A couple of the other notes I took here from this past week. Tommy Castellanos, he's going by now. He is no longer Thomas. He's now Tommy, as he is transferred from Boston College to Florida State. He's sticking to his guns, John, saying that Nick Saban is not there to save them. He's talking about Alabama week one. I just think this is a very bold comment for a guy who lost his job at BC in November and then just like left school after he got into a little bit of a arguing match with Bill O'Brien there. I'm just like, I'm getting the USC, the dog hype video climbing in, going into the neutral site game, the opener against Bama like 10 years ago, that when they're crawling, and barking and all that kind of stuff. I'm like now starting to like fear that Florida State's going to get like absolutely bludgeoned in week one.
It's certainly on the table, and like you get tantalized even more so when you see like the line at like 13 and a half. It's like, oh gosh, I see Alabama winning this game by 3 touchdowns, all this and that. But Castellanos, if he can just, I think that the fit within that offense, and we'll get to that when we talk about Florida State a little bit more, but him and Malzahn, I think it could work. And it could, Bama could be a little bit caught off guard there. And I don't know. Like I don't want to let my disdain for Alabama like bleed in too much, but it could get a little bit dicey potentially. But that's like my heart of hearts speaking. I think with my head, Bama probably just waxes Florida State, and I'm just not the biggest Norvell guy, and I think there's a lot of issues at Florida State generally that go beyond Castellanos running his mouth.
Yeah, we'll get to Florida State and the Knolls in a few minutes. One final note here from ACC Media Days. I think this was the big one. Lashley made some comments about depth and the SEC's depth compared to the ACC depth. Now, I did not realize when SMU joined the ACC that Rhett Lashley also took on the role of conference spokesman and stumper and just propaganda spreader, I guess, for the ACC. As he just sounding like a snake oil salesman when he comes out and says that the SEC has had just six conference champions since 1964. That's not depth. Meanwhile, totally negating the fact that Clemson's won the ACC 8 out of the last 10 years. And if we go down through the conferences here, I think that the like sixth or seventh best team in the SEC is going to be better than the sixth or seventh team in the ACC. But I know you're an SEC guy, so I'm sure you have a few opinions on what Mr. Lashley had to say this past week.
I just don't understand why people, just the same way that we don't understand why Florida State is poking the bear with Alabama. Like, I don't know why these kind of fringier coaches who, in both cases made the college football playoff last year in both Cignetti from Indiana and Rhett Lashley, they both feel the need to just really dig at the SEC. Like, is this a good idea? Is this something that's going to age particularly well? When I think you could argue in both of those cases last year, as good of stories as they both were, maybe a little bit lucky. I think that the way that this year plays out will kind of determine if or not it was rather fluky for both of them to make it to the 12 team playoffs. So I don't get it. I don't know why they feel emboldened to go after the SEC like that. I'm not Mr. holding the shield for the SEC or anything like that, but I just think objectively it still is the best conference in college football. I don't think that that's really like a difficult argument to make, and good for them for making us talk about it. But I think that at the same time they sound ridiculous for doing so.
Did your job, Brett. Absolutely did your job. Got us talking about it. He just kept like reiterating that the ACC is a top three conference as if that's some sort of badge of honor. now. I mean, I guess that's also he's also taking digs at the Big 12 at the same time. He might have actually been taking more shots at the Big 12 than he was at the SEC there because he just kept reiterating the ACC is a top three conference. Sure,
You want to
sure,
talk about want to talk about depth? That's the Big 12. Like
yeah,
there's like 7 teams that legitimately could win that conference this year. The ACC three is kind of stretching it. That's
yeah,
depth on the
completely
Big
agree.
12 side.
Completely agree with you. I cannot wait to talk about the Big 12 because there you can just go in so many different directions and like actually feel like legit like about your argument that you're not just arguing to argue. Like there's so many different arguments that you can make when it comes to the Big 12. But this is an ACC program today, so we will stick with that. Let's get back into our team previews here. We'll head back up towards the top and let's talk about Miami. The Hurricanes, their win total, John, sitting at 9.5 right now. It's plus 122 to the over on FanDuel, minus 150 to the under. They returned 15 starters to this team, seven on offense. That's on an offense that put up over 43 points per game last season. Obviously, different quarterback, Carson Beck coming in off that injury. Can Shannon Dawson fix him is the big question mark. I like this marriage a lot. I do think if there's anybody that can fix what's been wrong with Carson Beck, it's Shannon Dawson. The defense, on the other hand, they do return like 8 starters. Not sure if that's a good thing because they allowed over 30 points per game a year ago. The defense was terrible. Always a question mark. So I guess the real question for me, though, is how much pressure is on Mario Cristobal this year?
It's got to start to bear fruit here
It's a
when it
showman
comes.
year, right?
Yeah, this is big time for him. You know, like we've kind of established here that Clemson is the odds-on favorite here, but Miami absolutely needs to at least make the ACC championship game, and they need to get into the college football playoff. Like it's crazy the way that things fell apart for them last year, and they just it always feels like they're good for one or two slip ups under Cristobal. You know, we saw it a couple years ago against Georgia Tech. We saw it last year with the game against Syracuse. It's just there's always something with these guys, and I think you know you kind of circled it with the defense. That's where it needs to improve. I think the offense is going to be able to print points for the most part. It's super talented, even if like you know there's a decent amount of change going on at you know in important spots, everything like that. But man, come on, like they need to take care of business here, or otherwise, you know, you don't want to feel like if you're Miami that like you've kind of plateaued at this level, especially in an era where there's 12 teams that can get into the freaking playoff. Like you got to be in there.
Yeah, I mean, look, on one hand, yes, Miami has improved every season under Mario. They've gone from 5-7 to 7-5 to 10-3 last year, but they're still just like this bad taste in your mouth with Miami right now. And Mario is just something with it. It's like game management, which is like it's just like coaching 101. We know he's a great recruiter, always has been. The lines are going to be much better this year. They got that first round talent kid in Mayoga. I can't even pronounce his name. Francis Mauigoa, whatever his name is going to be an absolute stud. You got Beck. I love Ruben Bain on the defensive side. But I don't know. This defense, the secondary, something just does not quite sit right with me when it comes to Miami. Let's take a look at their schedule here. Share my screen again with everybody. Um, so the big thing with Miami's schedule, obviously they have the worst opening week in all of college football going against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. But once you get past that, no Clemson on this schedule, John. 9.5. You got plus money to the over. Where are you leaning with this right now when it comes to the U?
I think I like the under. I do, and they should obviously like you know get to at least 10 wins. I do think that Notre Dame beats them in the opener, even though that one is at home. But you know, I think that last 3 games, I would be surprised if they don't slip up at least once in that stretch, and I think that Florida can absolutely beat them as well. So that gets us down to 3 losses there in the regular season. So that therefore the under. But you know, I think that again that run where they face NC State, Virginia Tech, and Pitt, you know, in those last two being on the road, and you know those teams are going to get up for that. I could see Miami, you know, slipping up. I hearken back to some would say the Kenny Pickett game in 2017 when Miami was they were free and clear, like they were going to make the college football playoff, 4 team college football playoff. They go into Pittsburgh the day after Thanksgiving and just sleepwalk, and Kenny Pickett beats them. Ultimately, Miami has to play in the Orange Bowl, and that's where the famous who was the Wisconsin coach? This is so embarrassing off the top of my head, but he said turnover chain my things that would get us.
Chris, was it Chris at that point?
Yeah, it was Paul Chris. Turnover chain
Yeah,
uh,
you can swear. We're on the
my
internet. We're
my
not no
my
exclusivity.
forking butt. He said so. But I remember that, and I know this is a decade ago, totally different, but I could see Miami just blowing it. It's they're a program where I understand the talent, I understand the case for them, but just believe it when I see it.
Yeah, I mean they are your classic wheels fall off kind of team. Wouldn't surprise me either. I'm leaning towards the under there at 9.5. I don't trust this defense to come through in the big spots when they're going to need them. Couple key numbers for you, John. Mario at the U. He is 1-5 versus top 25 opponents and 0-3 versus top 10. Notre Dame's going to be ranked there week one. Florida could be ranked by the time they see him. Florida State, who we're going to talk about next, could maybe they get some stuff going there too. And then some other dark horses in the ACC can mix into that category as well. So you got to show me, Mario. Show me this year for me to buy in anymore. All right, moving on. Let's head to Florida State. Let's head up to the Florida Panhandle to Tallahassee. 7.5 is the win total for the Noles. Plus 168 to the over, John. Minus 210 to the under. Heavily juiced there to the under. If I asked you, or if I said 12 months ago, Mike Norvell will be on the hot seat heading into to 2025, you would have said, I am a crazy person. But that is how far they have fallen, how fast things can change in college football. Life moves really quickly. Florida State found that out. They tried to bring in just so much new last year. It blew up in their face, going 2-10. So, how many wins does Norvell need to get this year to keep his job?
They got to at least get to bowl eligibility. Last year was an abject disaster, and I think that they become like the prime example of the double-edged sword that is relying on the transfer portal. You look at the best programs, and they will sort of supplement with the transfer portal, like Ohio State. They bring in Judkins, they bring in Caleb Downs, and Will Howard, and it takes them over the top. Florida State just trying to do, what they had done in 2023, just all these transfers, and it goes completely sideways for them. And the song remains the same this year. Like you have so much like a full on hockey line change. Once again, the only returning starter on offense is the tight end. I don't even know his name. That's not great. So you bring in Castellanos, like you said, who lost his job at Boston College last year. He beat Florida State. The famous the bet that the Florida State fan kind of welched on. That was from that game. Yikes. You bring in some guys that I do like, though. Deuce Robinson was a big time recruit at USC. I was kind of surprised to see him get shown the door there. Squirrel White, kind of a fast downfield playmaker out of Tennessee. Gavin Sawchuk, kind of a chain mover at running back. So there is some stuff there, and I do like bringing in Gus Malzahn to run this offense. Florida State was like super low tempo last year, just 61 plays per game. That's pretty much like watching molasses, essentially. The offense at UCF what was a little bit more up tempo, run heavy. So I think we're gonna see a lot of that. The defense should be able to kind of be a stabilizing force for this team. But I think that ultimately it comes down to how much this offense can gel, and do we see the 2023 where all the transfers worked out really beautifully, or do we see 2024 where it all blows up in their face? I lean a little bit more towards the 2024 instance, and Norvell could be in trouble here.
Yeah, tough schedule too. I mean, you open up with Alabama week one, and you've already given them some bulletin board material if the Tide really even need that. Having to go across the country to Stanford, we'll see, but you never know with how this Florida State program was last year at Clemson, at North Carolina State, at Florida to end the season. Virginia Tech's not going to be an easy out either. I'd lead towards the under with you. There's just too much here. I think for this program to get gelling in 1 year for them to actually get to like 7 wins this season.
Yes.
All right, so we'll move on and let me unshare my screen. There we go. Very good. We'll move on to Georgia Tech. And I want you to take the floor here on this one. Set this up. You're in Atlanta. What is the buzz, pun intended, with the Yellow Jacket Yellow Jackets, excuse me. We got a 7.5 for the win total. It's heavily juiced to the over. I think it's moved on some other books to 8.5 here. But people, I feel like nationally there is a significant amount of buzz around this Georgia Tech team going into 2025.
They've got it going. They're more rambling than wreck at this point. I love Haynes King and what he's been able to do for that program. Having him back, having Jamal Haynes back at running back is a big help as well. It does sting that Singleton left for Auburn. That definitely that takes some of the returning production away. But when you have a quarterback as experienced as King is and as entrenched in this system as he is, I think that the way that they were able to supplement at wide receiver through the transfer portal, it's going to end up being able to work out. I think that he can kind of make it happen. Sans Singleton, and they're tough. They very much like embody their coach, and there's just a lot to like about this Georgia Tech team. Unfortunately, in my opinion, as a Georgia guy, that they're no joke. They are tough. They are a tough out. Anyone that plays against them, they are going to be feeling it on the Monday afterwards. So it's not totally surprising to me to see the over under move to 8.5 wins for them. They just don't feel like they're going to lose 4 games.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, they really made a lot of noise last season. They went 2-1 in games against top 10 opponents. That one loss was the 8 overtime game against Georgia that they fell apart in the
That
second.
game almost gave me a stroke.
I'm
Yes.
sure it did. And you were probably like in your Thanksgiving food coma still and like
Oh, it
get
was bad.
jolt of energy and then the nap and all that kind of stuff. It was probably a rough night there for you, I'm sure. Haynes King went 5-2 last year in games that he played fully. They signed a top 20 recruiting class going in here. So they really made some noise. They've had back-to-back 7-6 seasons. I think they get to 8. They might get to 9. I'll pull up their schedule here quickly for us so we can take a look at that. But as you'll notice, when it comes to Georgia Tech, if I can find this schedule wherever I put it, let's see. Of course, this stupid Zoom thing can't let me. I'm sorry. I shouldn't call Zoom stupid. That's rude of me. There we go. Georgia
It
Tech
hears
schedule.
us.
Very, very good. I love that week one matchup. Friday night, Labor Day weekend at Colorado. That's like a sneaky fun way to start the college football season. Then you got Clemson's at home this year, Virginia Tech's at home. They have to go up to Duke, North Carolina State, and Boston College, but you get Pitt at home as well. Very workable schedule outside of the Clemson Georgia games. I feel like that they can get to that 8-9 win mark this season.
Yeah, they're a team that they're sort of like the inverse of Miami, where maybe the talent isn't all the way there. It's getting there, but it's not all the way there. But you don't think that they're going to slip up in the games where they're supposed to take care of business. Like like Duke will be tough and Virginia Tech will be tough, but I think that ultimately like Georgia Tech is just like the superior side on both of those, and I think that they're just going to be able to get it done. So outside of Clemson and Georgia, like this really could be a 9 win season. I think for Georgia Tech, I think that everyone needs to take them very very seriously.
Yeah, Georgia Tech has not had an 8-win season since 2016. No Miami, no Louisville, no SMU on that schedule this year. I think things are looking pretty good in Atlanta for the Yellow Jackets this season. I like the over. I would even go probably to an alt-win total and maybe try to find like a 9-win or something like that at a nice number. So that's what I would go with Georgia Tech. Let's head up the coast and go to Raleigh. Let's talk about NC State here. 6.5 is their win total. The over's at plus 108, under minus 132 on FanDuel. Coming off their first losing season since 2019, Dave Doran's squad. Now, Dave Doran in the past here, I think he's in like his 13th season at North Carolina State. Just 3 losing seasons. One of them is last year. The previous 2, he's bounced back with at least 8 wins in both of those. So, do we have another bounce back for Dave Doran's squad in the Wolfpack this season?
I have an NC State problem. I always believe in them. I always think that, when you're talking about like the best of the rest from the ACC, it's like, they're tough. They sort of remind me of like the ACC version of like Kansas State, where they don't play exactly like the rest of the conference does. And it makes for an uncomfortable afternoon every time that you line up on Saturdays against them. So I like them. I like the talent on this team. Losing Casey Concepcion to Texas A&M is tough, but they've got this running back that I like a lot. One of the best running backs in the conference and the country. used to be known as Dalen Smothers. Now he's Hollywood Smothers, and to me, that I think is notable. And he ended the season on an absolute tear. Last year, C.J. Bailey, I think, is an interesting quarterback as well. Kind of a beanpole. Like he's like 6'6", but like 210. So he looks a little bit skinny out there, but I like the way that he can deliver the ball. And going back to the Concepcion thing, they were like almost over reliant to the point where it was hurting the offense last year. I mean, you're getting 5 yards a target out of this guy last year. That there's something broken with that offense in that sense. Like you're spamming essentially, and it's not working. So I think that almost it's a addition by subtraction in that sense. They're going to have to be a little bit more balanced. Justin Jolie, one of the best tight ends in college football, as well. They lost a lot on the secondary, so they're going to need to be able to score this year, but. I think that they have the pieces to do so. So I'm a little bit bullish on NC State, at least relative to the 6.5.
Yeah, some very fun pieces on offense, as you mentioned. CJ Bailey, the sophomore quarterback. He did so like basically if you look at NC State's like freshman passing seasons, it's like Philip Rivers, CJ Bailey, Russell Wilson. Not a bad list to be there.
Mm.
So I really like the CJ Bailey heading into year two as well. The defense, especially the secondary, I think is the question mark when it comes to the Wolfpack. They have a new defensive coordinator in DJ Elliott, who has not coached a top 50 defense since 2015.
Ooh.
And that was at Kentucky. He then went to Colorado, Kansas, Temple, stopping the NFL as well. Not exactly like the murderer's row of defensive programs, but still not even to get into the top 50 over the past 10 years there. He's got some work cut out for him in the secondary.
Yeah, what does he have on Doran? That's my question because that resume does not scream like that. This is a guy you need to hire.
Right. No, I agree with you. So we'll look at their schedule really quick here. And they kind of ease in, I feel like, where if you're going to go with that over ticket, you better hope that going into that Notre Dame game that they're 5-1 or 6-0. You start off with East Carolina and Virginia at home. They go to Wake, to Duke, got Virginia Tech at home, then they play Campbell, and then they play the Irish there. You really need North Carolina State to have at least 5 wins in their pocket by the time they play Notre Dame, I feel like in mid-October, if you want to cash that over ticket.
Yeah, they're going to need to bank those. That stretch where they go to Notre Dame and to Pitt, I think is very difficult for them. Tech in Miami difficult as well. I think the last two games of the year are more on the coin flip side of things, and we'll kind of fully fleshed out versions of all of those teams, both NC State and Florida State and UNC by that point. So we'll kind of be able to see it a little bit more clearly. But yeah, they're going to need to make their hay while the sun is shining early, and then hopefully, kind of finish the season strong in those last two games.
So that brings us to Virginia Tech. 6.5 is the win total for the Hokies, plus 130 to the over, minus 162 to the under. I feel like when I think about Virginia Tech, they are that like perfect lower middle class program in the ACC where they just for years have, I feel like they've been like the same like 6, 7 win school for the past, I don't know, decade at least. Per your chart that you threw in our rundown, John, just 5 returning starters to this team this season. That's the fewest in the ACC. But 6 of the 7 losses they had a year ago were by a touchdown or less. So they do play in close games. There was some injury problems that really derailed them down the stretch a year ago. Drones is back at quarterback. Interesting schedule here that's workable. I could see this team getting to 7 wins, but how do you feel about the Hokies?
Yeah, this is put up or shut up time for Brent Pry. Sort of like the lower middle class version of what the pressure that Mario Cristobal is facing because they bring him in after Fuente kind of flames out, and there was so much to like about Brent Pry coming in. Really liked his resume at Penn State and the defenses that he was able to put together there. I drank the Kool-Aid on this team big time last year. I love the way that Kyron Drones finished the season prior. I loved the addition of Bashal Tutin, and they had some other interesting pieces there. So I was disappointed with how last season shook out. I thought that they were kind of a dark horse, but I'm almost like willing to buy the dip essentially because they bring back Drones, who I think it's just a big deal that he had another year to develop and kind of sharpen the axe, as it were. I love their addition of Terrion Stewart out of Bowling Green at the running back position. He's a guy that reminds me of like it's like tackling a fire hydrant that can run really, really fast. Like he's just kind of like this spark plug back there. And he's been in college football for forever. He caught my eye during the COVID year, like one of the Maction Wednesdays, long, long ago. And he's still playing college football, which is that's fun. But regardless, I just am willing to say that Virginia Tech can kind of get this thing figured out. I think it is telling, like you said, that yes, the losses were bad last year, but they were really, really close. They almost beat Miami in Miami. Miami, their game ops tried to freaking like hose them. They just like turned the lights out at at the
That's
end of that
right.
Hail
That was
Mary.
that play at the back,
Yes,
the back
back
of
of the
the
end zone.
right at the very end of the game.
Yep.
Yeah, look. So let's look at their schedule. We got to get to 7 wins here. I think this might be a little tough as you
Okay.
really dive in. You got South Carolina as you open things up there. That's not going to be easy by any means. Then you got Vanderbilt, who beat Virginia Tech last year to open up the season. Old Dominion, Wofford. Until then you get to the NC State game. They have to go to North Carolina State, to Georgia Tech. They have Cal on a short week. Louisville this season at Florida State, Miami, as we go right through here. Yes, no Clemson or SMU. This is a tough schedule for a team that has health issues and a lot of new coming in here to get this thing to gel. I don't know if I can get to 7 wins. I see why the under is at minus 162 at under 6.5.
Yeah, that's a heck of a road to hoe for them. They are that's tough as far as the schedule goes for them. So it could be one of those years where like you're encouraged just by getting to bowl eligibility if you're Virginia Tech, but that's a really hard schedule. That no way to really sugarcoat it. And then when I was digging into Virginia Tech a little bit before the show, apparently. NC Central, North Carolina Central, their coach at their media days said that Virginia Tech was trying to recruit their star running back, all conference running back, during their game last year.
Tampering.
Bold move. And then lo and behold, he actually ends up going to Virginia, not Virginia Tech. So the interesting little turn of events there. But if that's true, shame on you, Virginia Tech. That's not good.
I saw that. That is like one of the top like headlines on ESPN's college football page right now as we record this on July 27th. Tampering. I mean, one like so to calm him down. I read that someone said, "Oh, he was just visiting the player." At what point, when do you ever let an opposing coach on your sideline in a game, whether they're visiting or what? What a bizarre excuse or reason to try to calm him down. I understand why NC Central or what I believe that's the school, why that coach got so upset. I would have probably like fired my assistant if that's what he told him. No, he's just visiting right now. Like, get out.
Yeah,
Goodbye.
no such thing as just visiting during a game. Like, just no, absolutely not.
So very strange things there. We'll see if anything comes out of that. As you mentioned, he went to Virginia, not Virginia Tech. So I don't know if they're going to actually be able to get them on any sort of penalty there, but we'll see. All right, so we got 5 teams left in the ACC, John. We got Wake Forest, we got Boston College, Cal and Stanford, and then Virginia. I don't really, these teams, none of them really speak to me that we need to go too far in depth with, but we can do a little grab bag here. I have a BC thought if you want that. We can talk about any of these other schools. And then I do have to talk about Wake Forest's coach here before the end of the show, but for non-football reasons. So if you have any thoughts on any of these programs, we got the Frank Reich 1 year experience out there in Stanford. Please go for it.
Yeah, what Andrew Luck is doing is very tech startup out there at Stanford.
Perfect
I
place.
almost respect it because I feel like Stanford is just a program that is ill-suited for this particular era of college football. It's just a harder sell to get guys to go there when the academics are what they are. Cal kind of in a similar boat, so that you do kind of have to do things differently. So I'm interested to see what's going on there at Stanford. But beyond that, Wake Forest starting anew this year with their coach. Big respect to Dave Clawson. I thought that he did an awesome job during his time at Wake Forest. It obviously didn't end great, but some really, really strong competitive seasons there. There's a lot of times in which Clawson was kind of like bandied about it as like oh, he could go to a bigger program, this and that. And he's like, nah, man, I'm good here. I'm good at this tiny little school in North Carolina where our stadium is really far from campus, and I'm just gonna keep rocking. So respect to him, but it's gonna be a tough kind of year zero for Wake Forest, and beyond that. I wanna believe in UVA, but I think they lost a little bit too much. I mean, they bring in Chandler Morris, which helps, but I really like Tony Calandria. He's at UNLV now. They lost Malachi Fields, who's now playing for your Irish. So Virginia, I think, is in for a bit of a tough season as well. And then my only note on BC before you give us yours. They do have a guy named Turbo Richard, which I think is at least worth noting.
That's a great name. Absolutely a great name. Yeah, Boston College coming off back-to-back 7-win seasons. Year two for Billy O at the Heights this season. So earlier I asked you like, what's the buzz going around with Georgia Tech and Atlanta, and everything's good, and it sounds like people are hyped. I can tell you the buzz around BC is who's coming to play BC. That is what people want to know. If you look at Boston College's schedule, their home schedule is very tough this year, but there are three matchups where it's like, ooh, if I actually want to see some like real college football talent and some like really good teams, might want to take a trip over to Chestnut Hill this year as they have Clemson, SMU, and Notre Dame all coming to town this season. So for Boston College to get back to bowl eligibility for a third straight year, they're going to have to win a handful of games on the road this year because that home schedule is not forgiving. I like Billy O'Brien. I think he's a good coach. I'm really intrigued by the Lonergan transfer that he got out of Alabama, who was a four-star high school recruit. But we'll see. He might not even be the starter this year. Still a lot up in the air for the Eagles. Yeah, so BC, like they're going to have to really show that they can win some games on the road here if they want to get back to that 6-7 win total.
So that's obviously a big ask, but at the same time, like Bill O'Brien will have those guys ready to
Yeah.
go. I think that he's just like a coach that it's not hard to believe in what he's able to put together. I think it's been a good stint for him thus far at BC, and I think we could see a little bit of growth this year, but improving it in the win column will be a challenge with that home schedule for sure.
So we're gonna wrap things up with like a little like ACC quick hits. I'm gonna ask John 5 questions. He's gonna ask them back to me, just our kind of thoughts, best bets, or whatever you want to say or call this to close things out. But before we do that, I left one comment from ACC Media Days that really just it caught me off guard. So they were talking. This was, I think, on the ACC network. They're talking to a couple of the kids from the Wake Forest program. Jake Dickert is the new head coach at Wake, and they were asking about, how they're getting to know their new coach and what kind of culture he's building, all those kind of questions. And one of these kids talks about how he had a big cookout for the entire team at his house. That's a lot of guys to feed. That's not the headline here or anything like that. The headline is that Jake Dickert soaks his burgers in Sprite before he throws them on the grill. I am very much an anti-soda guy. I don't like soda. I don't drink soda. I haven't had soda in probably like 10 to 15 years now.
Whoa.
Not a fan whatsoever. I think this is disgusting. I hate when people do this to steak tips. I have some family members who I love dearly and mean the world to me. They have soaked steak tips in Coca-Cola before, and I'm like, what do we? No, no, no soda on my meat. I am out. Hard out on this. I heard like the reasoning was to tenderize the meat. You shouldn't have to tenderize your hamburgers. They're already pretty tender to begin with. It's ground beef. So I am so out on this. Wake Forest might not win a game this season.
Yeah, no, that's goose egg worthy from him. They really might not win a game as a result of that. Soaking, yeah, you just don't need to do that. And with soda, I mean, like the only crossover I could even like remotely rationalize is some people will do some Dr. Pepper action on their ham, but.
Okay.
I don't really even like ham, so like that's something that I don't have to deal with personally ever. So odd choice. It gets us talking about Wake Forest, so that there is that. But boy, that it feels a little bit sus to be doing that, and that shouldn't be like the calling card and thing that everyone is talking about when it comes to your program going into the year. So bleak times, I think, in Deacon Land.
It's almost like I might have to like take a trip down there and like just like scope out the tailgate scene. Like, are people going to run with this now? Especially like if this team was to get off to a hot start, right? Let's say Wake Forest starts off like 4-0. Does this like become their calling card? Is this like does this like become a thing on game day that we're like, oh, here they go. They're dunking those burgers and Sprite. There it is. Wake Forest. That is the key to the Demon Deacon's success is just putting soda on their cheeseburgers.
That's a good eye. Like that's a good like take that could ripen here in just a little bit over a month's time. So keep an eye out for that because that would be kind of funny if that becomes like a rallying cry for them. Disgusting though it may be.
All right, very good. So we'll put that on the back burner. Maybe we'll come back to that in a few months if Wake.
Soak it in Sprite, yeah, and then back burner.
Exactly. So let's do like a little no huddle, quick hits or whatever, John. I'm going to ask you your ACC champion, your dark horse, your player of the year, your coach of the year, and then let's go disappointment. You can take these in any way you want, but let's just try to rifle these off in like 90 seconds, and then you can ask me on the back end. All right. So let's start things off. Your ACC champion for 2025.
My ACC champion, Chalk City, give me Clemson. If they don't win this, I will be pretty effing stunned.
Very good. Dark horse.
Uh, Guys that we talked about in the first episode, they still stand out to me as dark horses. Louisville or Duke, for different reasons. Louisville offense can score with anybody. Duke, I think, can slow the game down, play really good defense, and kind of be a team that is kind of hanging around in ranked towards the end of the season.
Player of the year.
It should be Cade Klubnik, but I have my eye on Isaac Brown as well, the running back for Louisville. That guy is an absolute dude.
Coach of the year.
I think it's going to be Manny Diaz or Pat Narduzzi. We haven't given a ton of shine to Pitt on these shows, but I really like the kind of self-awareness that Narduzzi had changing the offense last year, and it worked really well while Holstein was healthy. I look for a lot more of the same there this year. And Manny Diaz, he can call a defensive game plan, and I love the Darian Mensah addition.
Pat Narduzzi is a URI guy. Love that pick. And then finally, your disappointment in the ACC in 2025.
Probably not hard to deduce where I'm going with this one, but give me Miami. I think that they're going to find a way to disappoint. That they're overtakers this year. I think that there's just a couple slip up spots for them. They will beat up on a couple teams, make it look pretty at certain points, but when it comes down to it, especially in those coin flip games, I think they come up short. So Miami, my disappointment this year. And flipping it back to you, who you got, champion?
I'm going Clemson. If they don't win, like you said, something went tragically wrong here. They're down to just about even money. Clemson's going to win this conference. They're going to be a threat to win the national title this season.
Yeah, I took a bite on Clemson to win the national championship just a couple of days ago while it was still at like 12-1. Dark horse, who you got?
I got to go Georgia Tech. I'm feeling the buzz there. I think 7-1 in the ACC play is very much on the table. They get Clemson at home, 14-1 right now to win the ACC. They could very well be in that game. It could be a rematch against Clemson in Charlotte there in December.
Yeah, they are going to be a tough out for anybody. I could definitely see them making the championship game very much so. Player of the year in the ACC.
It's chalky, but if you look at how the voters award this award every single year, it's the best quarterback. And so I got to go Cade Klubnik. You look at the past few years, Cam Ward, Jordan Travis, Klubnik fits that mold. I think I like him to win. I like him as like a Heisman pick as well. So you got to give him ACC Player of the Year too.
Glad you touched on that. I was going to follow up and see if you were interested in some Heisman action for Mr. Klubnik. Coach of the year, who you got?
I mean, if I got Georgia Tech as my dark horse, I think I got to go Brent Key, right, as my coach of the year. You look at how they typically award this one, it's always that like kind of surprise team. And if I think Georgia Tech's going to go 7-1 in conference play, I like Brent Key's chances of being coach of the year in the ACC.
Yeah, I think that that dovetails nicely with your dark horse pick. Who's going to disappoint us this year in the ACC?
I'm with you, Miami. I think there's just too many things could go wrong here for the Hurricanes, and if Carson Beck isn't right up here, it could be very bad. So I'm going to go with Miami as the biggest disappointment. I do think the wheels will probably fall off again, but Mario, prove me wrong. Show us something.
Let's see it.
All right, very good. Thank you very much for watching. That's going to conclude our ACC preview. You can find part one on our YouTube page at College Football Tailgate. If you could hit that subscribe button, it would mean so much to us. You can find us on Twitter at CFB Tailgate 25 and on TikTok at CFB Tailgate. We will probably, I think we're taking a little bit of like a week to 10-day break here, and then we'll be back doing the rest of the conferences getting into August as fall camps open up. There'll be much more to talk about here. The season is like 4 to 5 weeks away. Really looking forward to that. Thanks, guys, again for watching. John, thanks, man. Love the insight, and we'll continue with some more conferences in a few weeks.
Yeah, sorry for the brief pause here. Going on my honeymoon, folks. So
Oh,
give me a
there it
freaking
is.
break.
Look at that. Very good. Enjoy when have a moment of downtime. Maybe concoct some takes in your head. Come up with those. Be
We'll,
brainstorm.
we'll see what the Croatian internet allows me to look at college football wise, but we'll see.
Yeah, definitely let us know what those offshore markets are looking like there. All right. Very good, guys. Thanks again. Okay, cool.
Awesome.
All right, that was like 45 on that one. So I think the first like 5 minutes are going to look a little wonky because I hit